Thank you very much, David. Ladies and gentlemen, for me, it's a real pleasure to be here to honor a good friend. And David has told you about our friendship, and it was a real one, and it was a sincere one, and a long-lasting one. It's a pleasure to be here with President and Mrs. Bush to honor this individual who was such a good friend to all of us. I want to confess to you before I start making many more remarks, I just came from a root canal. So if I start drooling up here, somebody get a hook and get me off before I embarrass myself. But let me start by thanking Charles Foster, David Jones, John Williams, and Jim McGrath for transforming this corner of Buffalo Bayou into a beautiful, tranquil, and historic attraction. I think it is really fitting that City Council has named this bridge for Bob Mosbacher. Were he with us today, I'm sure Bob would join President Bush and me in being honored and indeed being humbled by what has been done here in our names. I don't think I've ever known anyone, ladies and gentlemen, who warmed my heart more than Bob. Bob Mosbacher just oozed charisma, and he oozed charm, and I always felt good when I was in his company. There were so many things, I think, to admire and to love about Bob. He was a caring father, he was a staunch friend, he was a shrewd businessman, he was a thoughtful politician, and a charming gentleman. He also happened to have been a really first-rate Secretary of Commerce and public servant. And as we've heard from Charles Foster and Anise Parker, the ladies used to say he was one hell of a handsome guy. But the thing that stands out most to me about Bob was his competitive spirit. His drive, I think you could say, his competitive drive was stronger than the breath on a mountain mule, wouldn't you say, Hushang? He was a tough adversary, he was a tough negotiator, and of course that's why we always called him SOB, Sweet Old Bob. For Bob, of course, sailing was a blood sport. He was a world-class sailor who won international championships. In business, Bob parlayed his successful South Texas gas field into Mosbacher Energy, one of that industry's most successful companies. In politics, Bob knew how to turn a candidate into a winner, and he became one of the best political fundraisers that ever pursued the art here in the United States of America. And finally, there was golf. Oh well, 3 out of 4 ain't bad. I will never forget, as long as I live, one particularly close round years ago at River Oaks Country Club. A wager might have been involved, but bragging rights always were when we played against each other. We were both so competitive that we never gave gimme putts. Bob lost that round on the 18th green when he yipped a one-footer. After slamming his putter into the green, he flashed those penetrating blue eyes at me, and he growled, "Nice win, Jim." He had a terrific sense of humor. I will never forget one of my last visits to him when he was in the hospital at MD Anderson, and Susan and I went up. I think this was, I believe it was Halloween Day. And we walked into his room, and there was a body in bed covered all the way up above his head, covered with a sheet. And I thought, oh my goodness, he's gone, he's left us. No sooner had we come in the room, he took the covers, he threw them off, and he had this Halloween mask on, greeting us with a Halloween mask, even though he was so seriously ill. Bob was a transplanted Yankee. But I'll tell you this, he admired and loved this city more than most of us homegrown Houstonians ever will. He appreciated its competitive nature and its free market spirit. He enjoyed its raw energy. But Bob Mosbacher didn't just take from Houston, he gave to Houston. He returned the favor, and he worked diligently to increase support for important institutions here like MD Anderson Hospital. Yes, Bob Mosbacher was a great man. He was a fine gentleman, and he was a truly wonderful friend. He made the world around him a much better place, and he made it a hell of a lot more fun, too. He was really, simply, a truly beautiful human being. And as the years drift by, like the waters under this bridge, his friends, his family, and the rest of us will miss him more and more. Thank you all very much. It's now my pleasure to welcome another great transplanted Houstonian who has contributed mightily to this city, a model First Lady, and our dear friend, Barbara Bush.
Obviously a cripple. Thank you, Jimmy. I can't think of one other thing that's left to say, except that it's a love story between three men, clearly. That rarely happens. I'd also like to say, since someone mentioned head tables, that Bob brought a group of businessmen to Japan, and that was the night George threw up on the Prime Minister. George, I mean, he blamed it on Bob, but anyway. That's about all I can say. George and I are grateful to all of you, and we love Bob Mosbacher. Even the wives love Bob Mosbacher. But in any case, thank you all very much. And I'm speaking for George, which is more fun these days. You want to say something? No, he doesn't. But we love you all and thank you.
I was going to say, as David mentioned, there will be a reception right across the street on the third floor of the aquarium. There's an elevator, and we hope you will join us. There'll be refreshments, courtesy of Tillman Fertitta. Each side of the bridge is different. So this depicts Bob at one stage in his career, and on the other side, a different stage, and there's different texts, depending upon the side of the bridge. So